All right, today we're diving into one of the most intense built-in conflicts in American politics. We're talking about the constant tug of war for power between the federal government and the 50 individual states. It's a battle that's been raging since the very beginning, so let's get right into it.
It's a question that sounds simple, right? But the answer is, well, it's anything but. This isn't some settled fact from a history book. Nope, this is a live, ongoing argument that literally shapes the laws you live under every single day. We're talking healthcare, law enforcement, you name it. The question of who's calling the shots is always up for grabs.
So the official term for this whole setup is federalism. But don't let that dusty political science term fool you. The best way to think about it is as a dynamic and, sometimes messy tug of war. You've got the national government on one side, pulling for one set of rules for everybody, and on the other side, you have the states, pulling back hard for the right to do their own thing.
So, where does this conflict actually come from? Well, believe it or not, it was baked right into the U.S. Constitution. The founders essentially set up the rules for this exact power struggle, and they gave both sides some serious firepower.
And here we go. This is the core of it all. On Team Federal, you've got the Supremacy Clause. This basically says that when federal and state laws clash, federal law wins. It's their trump card. But on Team State, you've got the 10th Amendment, which says any power not specifically given to the feds is reserved for the states. That's a powerful shield. And these two clauses, they are constantly at odds.
So that's the theory. But what does this fight look like in the real world? Well, let's take a look at one of the most interesting modern battlegrounds, the legalization of marijuana. This is where you see the contradiction just laid bare. At the federal level, marijuana is a Schedule I drug, right up there with heroin, highly illegal, period. And yet, almost half the country has basically said, no, we're good, and legalized it for recreational use. It's a direct, head-on collision between federal and state power.
So, the big question is, why aren't federal agents raiding dispensaries in states where it's legal? The answer is a fascinating legal concept called prosecutorial discretion. Basically, the federal government has the power to enforce its laws, but it can also choose not to. And for now, it's pretty much decided to take a hands-off approach and just let the states run their experiments.
And wow, what an experiment it's been. This number? $400 million. That's the kind of tax revenue Colorado alone pulls in from marijuana sales each year. That money is funding schools, public health, you name it. So for the states, the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just about personal choice, it's about big, big money.
But this whole clash creates a really messy reality. Because it's still federally illegal, most banks are too scared to work with legal cannabis businesses. This forces a multi-billion-dollar industry to operate almost entirely in cash, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly risky. It also creates tension between states. You had places like Nebraska and Oklahoma actually suing Colorado, saying its legal market was spilling across their borders.
Okay, let's turn to another massive test of federalism, one that affected every single one of us, the COVID-19 pandemic. This national crisis threw that tug of war between federal and state power into complete overdrive.
From the very beginning, we saw this incredible split. The federal government, through the CDC, could issue guidance, recommendations, but it couldn't order a national lockdown. Why? Because the power to regulate public health and safety, often called police power, traditionally belongs to the states. So you had some governors ordering strict lockdowns while others did the exact opposite, creating this deeply divided national response.
The result was this unbelievable patchwork of policies across the country. Whether you had to wear a mask, if your kid's school was open, if a restaurant could even serve you indoors, it all depended entirely on which side of a state line you happened to be on. This is federalism at its most chaotic and its most personal.
The conflict got so intense that, of course, the Supreme Court had to step in. And in a huge decision, it ruled that the federal government could not impose a sweeping vaccine mandate on most private businesses. That was a big win for state power. But, and this is a huge but, in the same breath, the court said the feds could require it for healthcare facilities that get federal money, a classic reminder of the federal government's power of the purse.
So after looking at these huge battlegrounds, what's the verdict? Is this system a brilliant design, or is it just a recipe for chaos? Let's, look at both sides of the coin here.
On the one hand, the great strength of federalism is innovation. States can act as these laboratories of democracy, trying out new ideas. A perfect example is California's setting its own super strict car emission standards, which basically push the entire auto industry toward cleaner technology. But the weakness? Confusion. The clearest example is the pandemic, where that chaotic patchwork of rules led to widespread frustration and huge political fights over basic public health.
All of this brings us right back to that central question. After more than 200 years, the debate over who should have the power is more intense than it's ever been.
And look, this isn't just some abstract debate for constitutional lawyers. This is about how we as a country actually decide to tackle our biggest problems, from public health crises and climate change to drug policy. Every major issue we face gets filtered through this lens of federalism. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. In an era where our challenges are increasingly national and even global, is this constant tug-of-war still the best way to govern? Is it a feature that keeps government innovative and close to the people, or is it a bug that stops us from acting decisively as one nation? Does one side really need to win this thing, or is the struggle itself the whole point?